Okay, so now we've got it stopped, and that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and get the camera. Let's go ahead and get the lights in now. It's really important. So the idea is that it doesn't really give us shadows, and that's really important for this. So we're going to do a 3-point light system, which is really important. So I'm going to go into Create, Lights, Directional Light. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and scale it up. So you can hit the R key and just scale it up so you can see it, and move it up. It doesn't matter where it is in your scene. Okay. What matters is the direction it's pointing. Okay. So directional lights is like the sun. And we want to create it just like a regular 3-point light system, where you have a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Okay, it should be, that's part of your lessons, so you'll get to understand how lighting works. So that's really important. So basically, I'm going to set this up like a 3-point light system. Okay, so I want the shadows to come in from this light here. This will be the key light. So I'm gonna minimize this for a second, so we can get as much room as we can in here. All right. So from above, we'll have a key light. So if I go to the top view, we have our key light here. Okay, facing down, right, on that object. All right. So. And then we want another light over here, and then a backlight facing directly across from the key light. So I'm going to name that light. So I'm going to do a Control A, and this is going to become my key light. Okay, and we'll enter that. All right. So I'm going to do a Control D and hit the W key because I just duplicated it. And I am going to rotate it now, this direction. Okay, like that. Just like that. So these two need to be basically across from each other at 45-degree angles, or close to it. It's not really a rule of thumb, but you get the idea. Alright, so I'm going to go to the perspective view, and you guys can see kind of how I got that set up. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this one back. I just rotate it down a little bit like that. This light will have shadows invoked, and this will have no shadows invoked. So there won't be anything on that. That's just going to be pure light coming through, just to fill in dark areas. And then I'm going to duplicate this one again. Move it, and then this one will be in the back directly across from the key light, and we're going to rotate that one. So I'm going to go in my perspective view. That needs to be totally rotated around like that, and this will have a kind of a really steep angle to it. Okay, way more than 45 degrees. Okay, something like that. So that's what we have. Again, it doesn't matter where these are. Now there are lights that you will work with, like point lights, that we'll kind of play with later, that will have that. And you need to understand lights really, really well. But right now I'm gonna kind of take you through how to set up just lights for this crate. Really show this off. All right, so now we gotta kind of finesse these a little bit. Okay, so if I click on the key light, let's go to the attributes. So Control A, hold Control A, you can see my key light, and here's all my attributes. Okay, that's not all of them. Hold on. So this is my intensity. So the intensity can never be 1. You can't have 1, 1, 1. They have to add up. Okay, so I'm going to start with a 0.8. We're going to emit. Illuminates by default, emit diffuse, and emit specular. If you turn off this, it's like turning the light off, like the light switch, turning it off. Okay. emits diffuse, meaning that if you turn that off, it won't show up on the diffuse. And the specular, if you don't want any specular highlights from it, you can turn that off. Okay. All right, cool. So I'm going to go down to Arnold. Just don't worry about any of those. Okay, go to Arnold directly. Now when we turn that on, okay, then it turns Arnold on. So you have to have that on. Okay. And what kind of color temperature do you want? Well, we don't want too warm, so let's just leave it at 6,500. Normally I have it around 6,000. 1, 2, 3, 6,000. Exposure, we got to match these two together, so 0.8. And angle, we don't need to worry about that. Samples, let's do 2. That's shadow samples. Cast shadows, yes, we want to cast shadows. That's the key light, so we'll cast shadows. And we'll just leave it as is right now. That's good, that's all we have to do. Okay. This one here is the fill light. We're going to click on that. Type in 6,000. Whoops. 6,000. And the intensity is going to be quite a bit lower. 0.5. And exposure 0.5. Okay. And we don't want to cast shadows, so I'm not too worried about this at all. Samples. Shadows is off. Okay. And the backlight. Okay. So that would be 0.25. Exposure to 0.25. Use color temperature and type in 6,000. And we don't have any cast shadows, so we don't need to worry about samples. Alright, cool. That's done. So 0.8, 0.5, 0.25 for intensity. Okay, double checking everything here. Okay, matching. I always like to look at the matching. Maybe I didn't make any mistakes there. And then this one matching. Okay, just matching the exposure and the intensity. Make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And this one has. We'll talk about angle. That's how it diffuses the shadow to make it look more realistic. So let's go to view. I know I went pretty quick. Alright, so there's our camera. Let's go ahead and do our Arnold render. There we go. Looks like it's, there we go. Let's make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Put that 1 to 1. Oh, that is 1 to 1. Okay. All right. Okay. That's rendering at a very high resolution, like 1 to 1. Look how big that is. So I'm going to stop it. Okay. And it's pulling off of my my actual renderer. So I'm going to close that a minute. And when I'm working, when I'm just testing the renders, I don't want something that big. So to keep the same perspective, okay, perspective ratio, to get the same ratio, I can go from 1080 to 540, no problem, and not mess my ratio up. So if I go back into Arnold and render again, okay, there we go. It should render a lot faster because it's a smaller resolution. If I click 1 to 1, it will stay that window size. So that's the basic size of the window. Okay, there we go. I'm going to keep that open. Okay, and I'm going to play with the lights now a little bit. So, just moving that to the side. Okay, let's get that back where it needs to be. Alright, so there we are. Okay, so if I click at the back, okay, move that down a little bit, and I select it in my sky dome, right? It's my sky dome. And if I turn that intensity off, and if I turn the exposure off, it should be black, right? So I'm going to go to 0 on both of those, 0, right? And so that should turn that off. Let's see what happens. Alright, there you go. Now I'm just lighting the scene with my my lights. Okay? Alright, so if I click on that, I've got 8 on that. I've got cast shadows is on. Okay. Alright, so we're good there. So if I turn the intensity to 2, you can see it brightens it up. And if I turn the exposure to 2, look at that. And if I rotate that, it looks like the cast shadows is on, so I should see cast shadows. Might just not be rotating enough. So I'm going to rotate that. I can't see what I'm doing, so let me zoom out a little bit and rotate that a little differently. See if it'll let me. There we go. There's the shadow. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it again. So now we're starting to see a shadow. There it is. It's hard to see before. That looks good. Okay. Kind of want a little shadow. We want to be able to see a shadow. Just kind of give it a little shadow. There we go. That. A little bit this way. There we go. We want to see a shadow. That's important. Okay, so that looks good. So now you can kind of see what's happening and what I needed to do to get those shadows working. Now I can go from here. You can see that I'm just I took away the background light. So now I can tweak this out. So I can do 1.8. Okay, and let's match that with the exposure. 1.8. Lighting is important. It's super important. We can't have too dark a shadow. We can't have too light of a shadow. Okay, so that's good. And I think the rest is okay. So now I'm going to go back to a full screen. Alright, there we go. And let's go ahead and select that part of it. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and turn that back on. And let's go a little lighter. Let's go to 0.5 for intensity. There we go. And 0.5. Okay, there we go. There we go. Awesome. And that makes things run a little bit slower, doesn't it? There we go. That's trying to calculate everything. Alright, so another thing here, let's go ahead and move that over. Let's stop this a minute. Stop the render. That's looking pretty good. Not too bad. So I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to look at what we can do. If we have anything else in here we can mess with, I think that's okay. Alright, samples are 2. Let's get back into here. This light here is important. Now we have the angle. Okay, so in here, the angle is important. So if I go and play, I turn that on, basically turn that render on, and if I want to go in here and type in something like 2, hit enter, it'll soften that shadow up a little bit. That's kind of what we want to do. Let's go to 4. See how it's softening it up? Okay. Now when you soften up, when you turn the angles up pretty high, if you turn the angles up too high, what happens is that it becomes dirtier. It gets a little bit dirty. So the samples need to go up, and that will change. That basically every time you up the samples, the render time goes up. Okay, we're not creating an animation, so the render time is okay. If we were creating an animation, that could be detrimental. That could really ruin everything. So I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Actually, it looks pretty nice. It fits really well with the scene. Okay, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to do a full render. Okay. All right. So some of you may want to give me a little more of a render like that, and I'm okay with that. Let's take a look at what that looks like here. All right. So that looks pretty good. And I don't want the background. I mean, I just don't like backgrounds like that. It looks weird. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and I'll show you how to do that. So make sure you just select the background here. Okay. All right. Another thing I want to show you really quick is Windows Outliner. The outliner, so if you go to Windows Outliner, it shows everything in your scene. So if you're having a hard time selecting something and your scene starts to get kind of big like what I've got here, then Outliner is wonderful. You can click on stuff. So my key light, I forgot to name, actually that's not my key. Yeah, that's my key light. This is my fill light. Yeah, that's my fill, I think. Yep, that's my fill light. I'll just name that. I just double clicked on it. Hit enter when you're done, and this one will be your it's called a rim light. I used to do professional lighting back in my day, so it transferred over into Maya pretty easily. All that information in photography, I used to do that all the time. So now I'm going to go in here, and I am going to give that a full render. Okay, what's a full render? What's the difference? Arnold, that's kind of like an IPR renderer. Now I'm going to do a full render. You may not see much of a difference, but before I render it, I was about ready to show you something over here. So let me click on that and go into the light. Yeah, there it is. Light shape 1. Scroll down to visibility, and we're going to turn that to 0.15. Let's do that. It's going to be dark gray. Well, let's see. So right here, that's your full render. And we'll let that render real quick. It may take a while. So I was going to pause it, but it looks like it's going. I'm going to pause that a minute. Okay, so it only works if I don't have an HDR image. So I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to bring that down to black. Okay. Oh, I just don't want to see it. So I'm just going to make it black. So I'll render it again. It doesn't change the lighting at all. Does not change the lighting at all. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and render it one more time, and this time we're going to pause it. Okay, and there's our render. You can see the background is black, which is fine, no problem. So that's awesome. So I'm happy with that. And so it looks good. The rubber looks like rubber, the metal looks like metal, and the paint looks like paint. And so that looks great. Of course, you always have to finesse it in Photoshop or a paint program, because I'm never happy with the render. Even if I get the lighting exactly the best I can get, you still have to go in there and Photoshop it. You have to do some stuff. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That's a good render. I like that. So what you can do is you can either rotate the entire object so you get the same kind of render, or you can just render it to the back. I prefer that you rotate it, but that's up to you, because what happens is that I think we got a good lighting system. So if I close this and if I rotate the camera, let's go ahead and save this. camera, bookmark that, bookmark this one, and we'll just call this create. Can't see anything. My room is so dark. Great. Let's go PRSP02 or 01 and enter and apply so we don't lose this. Alright, so now I'm going to rotate around. Let's see what it looks like from the back. Same kind of perspective. Just kind of eyeballing it. Here we go. Render that one. And I'll pause this. Okay, now the only thing I don't like about this is that bright spotlight right there. So I am probably going to rotate the chest if I want to see the back. So that's the reason. Sometimes it looks good in some certain angles and then it doesn't in other angles. So what I'm going to do, another thing is I don't like how the light is kind of, it's not showing, it's not lighting the front of the chest. So I'm a little bit, I don't like that too much. I want to be able to see. Okay, so let's go back in here. I'm being super picky now. From perspective 1, there we go. Let me do one more render, and then if you do rotate it, you'll have to select it. Make sure nothing else is selected, and you can just rotate the whole thing like this. Right? Okay. And you can do that by typing in negative 180. So that's how you can actually do it. Okay? So I don't want that. Right, so if all your pieces start flying all over the place or getting bigger or whatever, you need to delete by type history, right? Okay? On all your stuff. That's what causes that. Alright, so one more render. And you guys get the idea? Pause it. Okay, so the render time is 31 seconds. It's not bad. And it's exactly the way I want it. I got the shadows, everything's looking fantastic. Okay, so now we want perfection. So here we go. So this is going to be the full render now. So how do you set that up? Full render. Alright, so here we go. We're all set up for that. Arnold render will be 6 on that. 3, 3, 3. We don't have any subsurface scatter. We don't have any of that. Total rays will be 12. Diffuse will be 2, 2, and then 10, and then 12. So basically adding 2 here, 1, 1. So we have 2 here, and then 2 here, 2 here. So we'll just add 1 to each one of those, and we add 2 to that one, 2 to that one, 2 to that one. We added a lot to this. Okay, it's going to take a lot longer. The Commons tab, we now have to go to 1080. Okay, so this is production quality rendering. Okay, so we're done. Just pause the video and you can go back and go forward if you need to. So here's the final render. I'll show you. Go ahead and pause it. It'll just take a long time. Okay, it just finished rendering just about 15 minutes, so make sure you give yourself lots of time to render your front and back views. So if you're ready to save it out, the rendering, so you're going to save it right from the render view. Click on File and go into Save Image and click on the option box. Raw image will give you a very, very dark image, so click on Color Managed Image and you'll basically get what you see here. Apply and close, and you're done. So when you save your image, basically you'll go to File, Image. So first of all, you have to go into the option box, make sure color management's on, apply and close. That gets that set, and then you do Save Image, And then I would always save your work as PNG and then hand it in as a JPEG. So PNG, okay. And this will be number 2. Okay, so you'll give me a front and back of the SciFi crate and wireframe. So let's talk about how you do a wireframe on shaded. Alright, so basically you have to destroy your texture. Okay, so make sure you save your work. And let's do 29. And let's do textured. Okay. Alright. Again, the workflow is you get to this point. Again, like I said earlier, when you're rendering, kind of render it out, pick all the details, write them down, write all the details that you want to change to the texturing or maybe even the modeling, and go back and redo it again. And that's how you just keep doing that process. And as you get better and better and better and better, you'll do less of that, but you still have that process of continually updating your work and getting it better and better and better. Rarely will you just go, well, hopefully you never do this. Rarely are you happy with what comes out the first time. Once in a while you might see that happen, but most of the time it's stuff you need to continue to reiterate to make it better, and that's normal. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to show you how to do wireframe on shaded. Okay, it's going to destroy your texture, so make sure you save your work. So I'm going to go right click over it and go to assign new material, go into Arnold shader, and hopefully they still have it in here. I'm looking for wireframe. There you are. Alright, and you have to do the same thing for these. Assign new material and wireframe. There we go. Okay, so in wireframe, we don't want to show triangles because those are ugly. We're going to do polygons. Okay. Fill color, line color should be black. Line width. Oh, we can take a look at that. We'll start with, let's just do 2. And that's it. That's all you have to do. This one here, I'll do the same thing on wireframe on this one. We'll do polygons, and we'll do 2 on this. Okay. And that's it. It's just a shader. And then you will go ahead and get rid of the floor. We don't need that. And we'll go ahead and render that out. And that'll be the same size and scale. It'll be way faster when it renders. I'll go ahead and pause it. Okay, that was pretty fast. It's 13 seconds, and there you go. You'll do a front view of this and the back view of this. So I'm going to go ahead and save image, and this will be a PNG, and we'll do create wireframe. You probably want to name these. Create, let's say, front PERSP, wireframe, or just call it wire. There we go. And that's what you'll turn in. Front wireframe unshaded, that's what that's called. And then the back wireframe unshaded. So we'll need 2 of those. Okay. And that'll do it, I think. I think that's all we need to have. Front and back perspective fully rendered, front and back perspective wireframe. And then I think I asked for a couple screenshots too, just in case things get bad for you guys and you're turning stuff in and all you can give me is screenshots. You still will be graded for not turning your renders in, but it won't be as bad as if you don't have anything to turn in. So I'm going to control Z let's see, go back and open my scene and go to my last one I just did. Always click don't save unless you do want to save something. Okay, this takes a while to load up, I think. I think that's why it's black. Yeah, okay. It was working before. See what happens? Alright, so don't worry. It still renders okay. So if I go to Arnold and render that, it still sees the texture. So I'm good. I'm going to close that off. Alright. Okay, so that is it. I can't think of anything else. So the only thing I would suggest is maybe put a texture on the floor that doesn't overwhelm your image. The floor's a little bit too plain Jane. So maybe find a nice texture online, and then when you see my final image, you can see what I did. Again, I'm okay with a plain floor, but if you're going to do a portfolio piece or you want to show off your work, you're going to need to put a little more work into the floor and add some interesting details to that. Alright, so have a great day and good luck with everything. Again, your SciFi crate, congratulations, you got it finished, and I hope you had a great time. Alright, I'll see you in the next module.